Today, we're talking about college search, and we're joined with the president of Culver Stockton College, Dr. Lauren Schellenberger.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes. Also known as Doc Shelley or Pres Shelley now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And college searches.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I think all three of us has had those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'm in one right now with my son.
That's right.
You know, I get to see it from that perspective as well. But, you know, we spend a lot of time thinking about what students are looking for in a college, when you work at a college and, you know, when you teach, you spend a lot of time thinking about what is it that makes someone decide to come to Culver Stockton College or to go somewhere else. So, you know, when you were doing your college search, what were you looking for?
2 majors, 2 sports activities, and then Greek life.
So a combination of all 5 things. Was it easy to find schools that...
I found 2.
Found 2. Okay.
In the entire country.
In the entire country.
And she had a big list.
Yes.
Yes. Now, she was working off a particular list with the tuition, but I was so surprised that, you know, especially the combination of psychology and graphic design, like how those didn't seem that difficult to me.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that would be that exotic of a combination, but maybe it was the organizations or the sports that kind of made it a little tougher to find the combination.
Not really.
Not really.
No.
It was, I think the way they did graphic design, like there was some that was very, what was it?
I think it was more like art-based for most schools.
Art or completely digital or something, and not sort of this blend of, yeah. Yeah, I didn't think it would have been that strange. And to me, it's not a strange combination, but that is something you get a lot. Like, what are you going to do with those 2 things?
I don't know. It doesn't seem that strange to me, though. I mean, you're probably using both of them right now, you know, or on a podcast that requires, I'm sure, some graphic design to promote it. And, you know, I'm sure some of the skills that you learned, particularly in the digital part of that curriculum, and maybe also in, you know, in the visual art or studio art part of it too. Look how beautifully designed, you know, your space is here.
And she created that.
Oh, really?
We tried to order something and it...
Very cool.
So, yeah. So she's like, let me just do this.
See, there's your return on investment right there.
I know.
Yeah. But, you know, I mean, you're coming up with a new and creative way to pair those 2 together. But what about the things that you learned? You think about, you were looking for a combination of 5 things. You were looking for the 2 sports and the Greek life as you know, add-ons to the majors you were looking for. What did you take away from your involvement in those co-curricular activities that you kind of still take with you as a lesson learned or that you employ in your everyday life? Conflict resolution? No? You never experienced any conflict?
Oh, I experienced a lot of it. There was never resolution.
But there was never resolution. At least it didn't fail. Okay, so you learn to live with conflict and move on? That's a skill too, actually. It like is, learning to let go.
Because sometimes you just can't do anything. I'm trying to think, you know, because sometimes witnessing you go through life and some of those things, I mean, you did have to learn how to navigate, you know, some of those differences in ideas, as well as even if things weren't going like they should, you tried to use the processes that were available. And so sometimes that worked out. Sure. Yeah.
Collaboration outside of the classroom. Yeah.
Well, and I think one thing, and we've talked about this, one thing about you, Victorya, and again, I don't know if it's having brothers, but doesn't do drama very well. She really prefers things sort of like even, you know, be direct, say what you're going to say. Yeah. We don't have to go around playing games or, you know.
I mean, I enjoy watching it. Just like don't
like
prompt me in.
like a reality TV show kind of level of watching.
Yeah,
You just don't
like,
want to
just
be
like-
sucked into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, that's okay. That's not a bad trait. You know, there's
Right.
plenty of people out there who love to be sucked into it, and that doesn't necessarily always work out well either. So
So sometimes it's sort of like just watching it go by, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm going to stay over here. So
So when you chose Culver Stockton, we were talking earlier, you were looking at another school in California. You were thinking the weather would be better, right?
And it would have been.
And it would have been. But ultimately, you went to Culver Stockton and you had some opportunities, not just in the classroom, but that were part of your curriculum that actually happened outside the classroom. Did you do any travel study when you were at Culver?
I did. I went to Washington, D.C. for the Missing and Exploited Children's trip. And then Florida for the psychology and marketing at Disney. And then environmental psychology in Iceland.
and with those, so people understand a little bit, those are travel trips with a class, and there's a lot of homework involved in that too, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it's not just a vacation, right? I'm sure that your faculty reminded you of that. So these are short-term faculty-led courses. So you were earning probably 3 credit hours of a psychology course for the Disney class, and
Well, and I think the Missing and Exploited Children was the first one you did. You did that your sophomore year?
Yeah.
And that was actually one of the reasons, even though Culver Stockton is in the Midwest and cold, but that was one of the big draws for you because as a career, that really appealed to you. Mm-hmm. And so even when you were, 16, you heard about that travel trip and you were like, that's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still on your list, isn't it?
It's moved down the list.
It's moved
but
down.
it's there.
It's there. And specifically,
I
you're
want to do
interested.
age progressions.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's where sort of that blend of psychology and graphic design has appealed to you because you really need sort of a background in both of those to be able to do things like that. And so you wanted somewhere warm and vacillated between California and Florida for the warmth and decided on other things that made it seem like Culver Stockton was the better option for you at the time, knowing that you can move somewhere warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's worked out so well for me.
there's still time. There's still time.
Right.
You could be somewhere warm in a matter of months, even, right? If you want to. I mean, it's going to be. You got how much more time in your program?
I mean, in a few months it will be warm here. So
Yes.
So she'll be good. She loves the summers here.
Yeah. So you need a job where you can winter in a certain place and summer in a certain place, right? So
Well, and we've just learned to plan spring break. So
give you something to look forward to.
You're on the countdown.
Yeah.
Right, 2 weeks-ish. And you'll get to, we call it like we're like plants. We need sun and water. So, and then she'll probably be back in all right, this is an okay place to live.
And it'll be a 1 week warmer. And when you come back 1 week
Yes.
further into spring. Yeah.
Although last year you went to Florida in January thinking it was going to be warm, and it was
in the 30s.
Oh.
yeah. So it wasn't.
Yeah.
So it still gets a little cold, but the travel trips were pretty huge for you. So as we think about what do students really look for in colleges as they're doing their search, certainly majors can be one of those. And I think different opportunities like this, like the travel opportunities and how they can learn and supplement and make certain that what they're learning is going to prepare them for what they want to do, even if they don't know.
Right. And the fact that we were just talking about looking for particular majors, the fact that you were looking at age 16, 17 years old and thinking this is what I'm going to major in. I'm looking for these 2 specific majors. And then you actually ended up sticking with those majors. that's kind of rare to come in thinking I'm going to double major in these two things and then also graduate with people change their minds all the time. So, one of the things that I always hope students are keeping in mind when they're looking for a college is, how locked in am I going to be to this particular major if I change my mind? Or if, they have a good or bad experience in a class here or there, it can really throw things off. So, I mean, think about your time when you were an undergraduate advisor, and you saw students who might have come to you, because I know I sent students to you sometimes who would be a biology major. When I was teaching biology, there would be, I might talk to a student and they'd be like, well, I thought I wanted to be, a physician of some kind, but I just don't know if that's what I want to do anymore, but I still kind of want to work with people. And I'd be like, have you heard about psychology? And I'd send that student over to talk to some of the psychology faculty, and then they would have this sort of like light bulb aha moment about all the career opportunities that were out there that they just felt drawn to, felt a greater affinity to, that, were probably a better fit for them in a lot of different ways, but were more accessible to them if they changed their major to psychology, just for examples.
Well, yeah, because wanting to grow up to become a doctor or a nurse, very common dream, which is great. And then they get into some of the anatomy,
organic chemistry. That's a big one. Yeah.
And then they realize
Calculus.
I don't want to do this.
Right.
And, and it's like, there's a lot of ways, like, especially when you think of healthcare providers, there's a lot of other avenues that you can be a helper in the field that does not involve
the sight of blood
or, that's where I was tapping out. Like, I want to help people, but I can, from a first aid deal with blood, but I'd prefer not to.
Yeah.
So there's lots of, and even in our field, doing the child advocacy studies, some people think like, oh, I can only do this. And it's like, no, there's like all these different roles as part of the multidisciplinary team. So even within those, there's lots of different ways.
I think it's hard. It's really hard if you're 16, 17, 18 years old to say, tell me what you want to do for the rest of your life. Let's pick a major for you, and you're just going to have a smaller set of opportunities based on this major. Like, no.
That's why I got 2 majors.
There you go. See, that's a reason to double major. And or a reason to have a major and a minor. That's probably a good reason to explore different internships as well. That's where I think we see a lot of students change their mind on what it is. Maybe they don't change their major, although sometimes they do. But maybe they change their mind about what type of career they want to pursue, because there's no such thing as a bad internship in my mind. It either helps solidify what you think you want to do because you have a great experience, or it helps you rethink what you want to do if you don't have a great experience. And that's valuable too, equally, maybe even more so. The sooner you learn, whoa, I do not want to, have this type of career, the better. And then you can, just change paths and come up with something else.
Well, I think that's sort of what for me, when I made it all the way through in undergrad, taking my LSATs and stuff. And then I actually sat in on a class in law school, like contracts, tort, litigation, like poke my eye out. Like, no, I don't want to do those kinds of things. I had always thought of it as like prosecution, which I'm certain that was part of it, but you had to take these other courses. And I was like, oh, but interestingly enough, anytime I had a chance to take an extra class in my undergraduate, I took it in psychology. And so when I went to do my junior check, the registrar was like, Angel, you only need one more class to get a major. I was, okay. And my 21-year-old brain, you know what I did? Who teaches that?
It makes a difference.
It did.
Well, okay, so you said that because you were going to Culver Stockton, which is a smaller school, so you really knew the faculty.
I did.
And so, the fact that you had a good idea about whether that was going to be a class you would enjoy or not was because you had a much better understanding of what faculty member had a teaching style that you really felt an affinity toward, or something like that, right?
It was. And, and I knew it was going to be okay no matter what. But at that time, there was a faculty that no matter how well, and I can write really great essays, right? I was an English major too. Like I can write, and I also tend to remember most everything I read. So, I mean, I would be pumping out the all this stuff and writing these, and I would get like one of the highest grades in the class on the test, but it was like a 17%.
Not very rewarding.
It's like no matter what which I mean, I still did fine and ended up with a B or whatever, and like there's just some faculty, and we know that like some faculty, no matter what you do, I don't think that seems to be the same way now.
Yeah, so definitely more of an old school kind of faculty.
It was
thing. Yeah,
but
I don't know.
You don't know?
Oh,
I had an experience.
You gonna name some names?
But
you're on your podcast.
That's all
They don't work there anymore.
All right.
No, it's all good. But
it was only one class.
It was one class. But I think what you're saying though is especially relevant because you do get to know your faculty at for somebody who, and I do know this enough about myself. Maybe I didn't know this being 17, 18 looking, but I really prefer smaller environments. I like to get to know people. I like to be involved. That is always really important to me. And then certainly I think, again, I don't think I ever set out to do this, but things just happen in life. My degrees were all from faith-based organizations, all different faith-based, and I've tended to always work for a faith-based organization, and that's always been important to me. So sometimes I think I don't intend to do things, but things just always seem to work out with that.
So when you were making your decision, and you were thinking about, got to look for psychology, got to look for graphic design, and then the co-curriculars that you were looking for. Where does the vibe come in? How did you know that like this is a place I could fit in? This looks like a place where I would belong. Did you visit the school in California, or were you kind of looking at their website, their materials that they sent out? How did you feel like, yeah, that's a place where I could feel?
I don't think I looked at vibes.
What's that?
I don't think I looked at the vibes.
You didn't look at the vibes? No.
That wasn't important.
No?
Which is interesting.
Because I'm all about the vibes.
You are all about the vibes. You are.
So when you got to Culver, you probably already felt, because, your mom had probably brought you along for all kinds of different things. You'd been on campus before. It wasn't a new place. The vibe must have felt comfortable enough that you felt like this is a place where I can belong.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, you graduated. You must have been okay.
I think you probably had, as your mom, I would probably say, like, you had some moments where you vibed really well, and then you had some maybe social experiences that you wish would have been a bit different.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I think that's with all colleges.
Yeah, because you get there.
That's just life.
Can you imagine what would life have been like in terms of sort of developing who you are as a person, not necessarily your technical skills or anything like that, just who you are as a person, if you had not lived on campus, been involved in sports or co-curriculars, and had the majors that you did? How did that change you from 17-year-old Victorya to now?
I put up with less.
You put up with less now?
I think that's about the only thing that's changed.
Yeah. So, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Depends on the day.
I almost want to say too, and you can disagree with me. I don't know that I would say you were the typical undergraduate student.
I don't think so.
You have always been like 3 going on 80. And I mean this in the most endearing, but you've always had a very level head on your shoulder, very like pragmatic, in the best of ways, right? And also very determined. Like, you know what you want and how you want it, and you go for it. And you're open to some other things, but there's not going to be really much of anything that takes you off the path that you haven't, like, that what you're going to want to do. And so that's why, like, you going, like, graduating high school a year early and going to college, like, to me, that was, I was never worried about that from an emotional, sort of adjustment type of thing. Cause I'm like, you're going to be fine, But I think with that, one of the challenges sometimes, especially being a teenage girl, and our episode that we just did that I think is dropping today, is Mean Girls and sort of the drama that can come with that. And that's just something that you've never really vibed with at all.
I'm good.
And you can be sarcastic, and I wouldn't say we're completely judgment free in how we, like, because we judge at times. But the one thing I've never heard from you is anything that seems catty or vicious or putting other people down. And so I think sometimes my experience with some of that, like, there's almost sometimes a certain amount of that in girls that age when they're really gelling with each other.
Yeah, that definitely can happen. So you lived on campus.
Sorta.
Somewhat.
I had a dorm room.
You had a room on campus
for probably half of my college experience, not always back-to-back semesters.
And so, you kind of got a glimpse of what is it like to live away from home, but not be completely an adult on your own, kind of a soft launch into adulthood. And you managed to avoid the drama. That's one of the things that I think is really important for students who are going to college these days. The chance to live with people that are from different places, have different backgrounds, different interests, different abilities. That's kind of a rare thing. There are not that many, places in this world where you're going to have that level of variety living together at that stage in their development either. Right. And so when you think about, what does that mean for how you view the world? And, it's really an important thing. It brings some of the things that you learn through classes like critical thinking and, some of those skills, it kind of brings in that soft skill part of it though too. Like, how do you avoid the drama? How do you get along, if you're living in a small space with somebody that has different ideas about, how they want to live in that space. And, those are skills and abilities to exercise for sure. And college is a great place to do it.
Yeah.
I didn't vibe with roommates.
You didn't fight with roommates?
I didn't vibe.
Oh, you didn't vibe with roommates. Oh, okay. Well,
that
happens.
It happens. And you dealt with whatever was brought up. You loved your roommate your last year.
That was because that was my friend.
Yeah. So you got to have fun there with that. And you're still close with her. So I do, and I think that's another thing, like, people choose colleges. How many students are choosing colleges sometimes because their friends are going there?
Yeah, that happens a lot.
That they know some people. So majors, extracurriculars, obviously, like, especially I'm thinking kids that are in sports and that want to continue playing. Sometimes they look for different ways that they can continue doing that. So sometimes.
And looking for a fit with that sport, talking to coaches and that kind of thing. And, that's a really important part, I think, for students going to college today, more so than it was 10 or 20 years ago. I mean, there are more students who are playing athletics longer into their high school and college career than there were before, for sure. So, just as students are looking for that fit with the major that they're interested in, they're really also looking for what are the other things they want to continue doing once they graduate from high school. And it might be sports, it might be a student organization, it might be student government, or, something like that too. Like, how do you continue with your interests and then also grow them and look for ways to get engaged that you couldn't in high school? So Greek life, for example, fraternity and sorority life, if that's something that you're interested in, you're of course going to look for a school that has that as part of what they offer for the co-curricular experience.
Right. It made me think of those extracurricular opportunities that actually help them build their resume or give them experiences. Like I'm thinking some of the literary opportunities or through communication. Sometimes, I've seen like the radios that they've been doing or the podcast segments that they're doing.
Yeah, because it's really, a lot of that too is about kind of building your resume. And, if you are out there looking for your first job and it's saying you need 2 years of experience, but it's an entry-level job, are there things that you can do while you're an undergraduate that kind of substitute in some ways, or at least give you something to talk about in a cover letter or in a job interview? Say, okay, well, I may not have had a full-time job yet, but, I did this, and this while I was, in college. And so, it's just an opportunity to practice what you're learning in class in a more real world kind of setting is, I think, that's something we focus a lot on at Culver Stockton, all the different types of experiential learning, including the travel study that we were talking about earlier. All of that is aimed at just making you a more well-rounded person, both in your major and out of your major, so that, you can handle whatever comes your way, because we don't know what the future is going to look like, right? We're preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist. Titles that we've never heard of are going to be common.
Yes.
Who in 1993 would have thought that, social media manager, what is that?
What is that?
Right? And then that's a legit job now. And, there are even places where, you can almost major in things like content. I mean, you can major in things like content creation. And that was just not even a thing.
No.
So as long as we're focused also not just on the name of the major, but what are you learning? What are you actually developing in terms of what you come out with? That's where the real return on investment comes in, because, parents want to know, is it worth it? Right? I mean, every time a parent is sending their child off to college, it's an investment. It's an investment in that student in their future. And I think any parent and the students themselves want to know that it's a wise investment. Is it still worth it? Did you ever question, why am I doing this?
Many times.
Many times.
I think she's still doing that right now. She's in grad school.
Frequently.
Yep. And so, you're thinking like, why am I doing this? What's on the other end of that diploma, right? And you want to have some assurance that it's worth it. It's worth the time, it's worth the money, it's worth the effort. And so too do your parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and as you were talking, it made me think of a couple of things with that. Just certainly as a parent, I've had a chance to witness some of those things that it's like, I was asking a colleague, like, hey, I'm with the Missouri Counseling Association and we have to fill out some tax thing. And she looks at me and she's like, well, Xander knows how to do that. And I was like, oh, well, I'll ask him, right? Because he did business and he's getting his MBA there. And so I asked him and he's like, okay. And she's like, if he needs help, just let me know, And so I think constantly those hands-on, and then seeing some of the stuff that you've been able to do, both like with this podcast. I mean, I think that's your dad and I were just sort of blown away, like with how professional the graphics have looked.
And I will say, I'm self-taught at video editing.
Yes.
We did not learn that in college, but
your graphics.
What I've learned from college assisted me in learning how to edit.
Which is exactly, I think, what you're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about, which is that ability.
Yeah, because we're not always teaching you the content because it's going to change. You know, whatever software program that you're using right now to video edit, it may be 10 years from now, people would be laughing if they heard that name, right? Because things just change like that. And so, but if you learn how to learn how to think, and how to also believe in yourself enough that you can teach yourself, like, oh yeah, I got this, I can do this. You know, that's an important part too. You get that sort of self-efficacy that comes from having met previous challenges and succeeded. You know, that's going to pay dividends for the rest of your career, not even just personally, but, you know, not even just professionally, but personally as well, I think.
Well, and I think this is one of the things that I have always loved about being at Culver Stockton as faculty, right? When I first came, and you were my boss, because what was really important to me as faculty was being able to bring the real world application in and letting me stay connected into what was happening out there in the field, because I didn't want to go rusticate in academia, which sometimes is one of the, and maybe not well-deserved reputations, but
kind of a
that
stereotype.
it is a stereotype. And I'm like, I just can't do that. Like if I'm teaching the students, I want to make certain that they are being taught for what we know now, or what's happening, or what we project that's going to be happening down the road with that. And so I know anytime I've brought that, like, so there's this child advocacy studies thing, can we do that, you know? And it's always been like, sure, as long, you know, like whatever we can do to help prepare the students. And I wonder sometimes, and I do know, I have some colleagues in other places that they have that ability and flexibility to bring that to their students. But I also have colleagues who that's not an option, and that we have to sort of stay with the curriculum, or what we do, or how we do it, or it can take 5 years for things to change. And in our fields, 5 things to get things started it's already changed.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I think that's one of the benefits of being at a small school too, is we can make changes really quickly in curriculum. The faculty can be very nimble, you know, and as long as we always have a culture of what's next, you know, what are we doing next? And we can't just be happy with what we've got and not be forward thinking and looking into the future and saying, okay, our students who graduate today are good, but what about the ones who are coming in as freshmen in the fall? What's going to change? How is AI going to change what they're expected to do? You know, and how do we make sure that we're tweaking our curriculum, our own teaching, our own practices, you know, to make sure that they're as well prepared as they can possibly be? Because it's just, things change rapidly. And if we don't change rapidly too, we're doing them a disservice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel like again, you're sort of on the back end of having your college search, but going through that process, do you feel like you're far enough away from that graduation that you're like, okay, yeah, I got out of it what I needed to?
Yeah. I guess. I don't know. I got the degrees. I'm doing the things.
Got the degrees, doing the things, and you're doing quite a few different things, and then now you're in another program doing the things.
Yeah, all the things.
All the things. Well, and you even talked though too, right? Which is, yeah, you're using some of the grad stuff, but you were talking about even how you're using some of the undergrad stuff as you're prepping some of these sessions that you're doing, so that it's all sort of coming together.
I think one of the fun things about, you know, as you get older, and I'm sure this is the case for you too, as you get older, like you're really close in time to these classes that you had, you know, and some of them you might remember fondly, and some of them you don't remember at all, and some of them are traumatic, maybe, hopefully not, but probably. And some of them you may think like, oh, I didn't really need that class, or I didn't use anything from that. And then 10, 20, 30 years from now, there may be something that happens that you're like drawing on things that you remember learning in a class that you never thought would be useful or interesting or whatever. You know, I mean, I think about, like, I took a class that was on rural sociology. It was kind of interesting at the time, but I was also just filling a requirement. And now I look back and I think, I wish I'd paid more attention. It was fascinating. And now it's even more so, because of the kind of work that I do and the way that I think about, the place of a small college in rural Northeast Missouri. But I didn't think that back then because I was, like 19 and just checking a box on my general education requirements. Did you ever have a class that, it was, you took it because whatever, and then it ended up being something that, kind of was useful or interesting much later in life?
I'm trying to think I think that, getting my psychology degree sort of by accident has been the most useful thing because who would have known that wasn't, the younger version of me I could never have planned my life. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's one thing I try to tell students too in advising, like, what do you love doing? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes the plan that you think you want or what you've sort of set out.
Or what your parents want for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think being open to different experiences and different learning opportunities, that helps you refine what you want to do in a way that like I said, I never could have envisioned. Mm-hmm. And so
you bring up a really good point about advising. I mean, think about academic advisors, and I know it works differently at different colleges. At Culver Stockton, academic advisors get really in depth, in knowledge with their students that they're working with. And, they stick with that same academic advisor usually the whole time that they're there. They might have multiple classes with them. They kind of get to know them maybe even outside of class a little bit, if they go to a ball game or see a play or a musical or something like that. So in that case, your academic advisors get to know your strengths and what might be a challenge for you and where you need to be pushed or, how many times when you were advising undergraduates, did you say, hey, have you ever thought about X, Y, and Z as maybe a career path or a class to take? And sometimes all it takes is someone else to say, have you ever thought about, to see something in a student that they didn't see in themselves? Yes. And, you can only do that really, really well if you know this student. Mm-hmm. So, you probably had some of those moments.
Definitely have had those moments. And, but even probably more of the moments that I hear back from students also were because they took a class. And I'm thinking of like the child advocacy specifically. The way that they do their job is so very different because somebody who, is a paramedic, they come back and they're like, before when I would have gone into that situation, I would have made this call because this was unlivable. Instead, now I know that would exacerbate the issue. And instead, there's community resources and we can connect them to where it's a help instead of making situations worse for families. Mm-hmm. And so I think sometimes it's a way they see the world in, that's helping. Because I think sometimes in our roles, in our own thinking, and we do this no matter what our age, but certainly when we're younger, we don't have as many experiences. And so they're only seeing it through this very narrow window and instead looking at all the different possibilities and the interconnections of, an impact overall. And so I think that's one of the big things that I see and hear frequently.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you had, your academic advisor, I'm sure your mom was, weighing in if you asked her to, but did you had, probably a faculty member that you had multiple classes with. They got to know what your interests were, what your goals were, why you were majoring in both psychology and graphic design, and could, give you some suggestions on what were some of the next steps that might be a good fit for you?
Yes, if I needed it, I had a color-coded Excel sheet where I kept track of everything, and all my semesters were already planned out by me. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. She was usually the dream advisee, that would come prepared, that the top. Mm-hmm. However, you also maybe a little bit different than the advising, which is those moments when things felt overwhelming or in the midst of the semester, because there were some tough semesters, senior capstone, You know, and so
Okay,
just,
well, I had to do 2 of them.
you did, you know, but like, I think it was like knowing you well enough just by being able to look at you and go, whew, okay, Victoria, here's what do you need today, sort of thing. And, you know, sort of taking care of that. So, so I think people got to know you in those ways too. So you mentioned something, and I don't know why this has made me think of this a couple of times. Have you seen the movie or the television series Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone?
I haven't.
Okay, I'm gonna have to send you. It's one of the best definitions of getting a 4-year degree that there is.
Okay.
You know, and so Sylvester Stallone, he's like, you go to college. I'm paraphrasing here. You go to college because it demonstrates that you're employable, that you will show up every day for 4 years and you'll do what's expected, whether you agree with it or not, that you can relatively put out some decent work, you know, and and, you know, and that you can think critically and that you can do like, and I'm like, this is actually one of the better definitions of why you should
check it out.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. But it's like, yeah, like there's some tenacity, I think, to getting a 4-year degree. Things get
definitely
hard, especially as you continue to progress into upper level classes. In a way that I don't know that everybody is prepared. Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I need this stupid class? Sort of stuff. But then going back, did I ever take something that I think I learned in some of my hardest classes? I learned how I learned. And I learned how I needed to organize myself and how I worked best, which I think that transcended into my career. Like, how do I learn? How do I do things? How do I need to organize the kinds of stuff to put the outputs out? When are my best days? Right? Because when I was in college, yeah, I was the one up at 7 a.m. at breakfast with 3 other people because that's my best time. That's when I like to work, when I get my work done. After lunch, I would really prefer not to take any classes if I didn't have to, right? But was all in for the social too. So, you know, you had to keep the evenings thing. So I think that's another big thing is like, you learn a lot about yourself when you're at college. And so that's the other thing I would really encourage parents to do, which is, yes, should kids be going to classes, getting their work done? Absolutely. And the other thing is, like, I didn't care as much about the grades. I mean, I didn't want my kids to like bomb out, you know, like D's and F's, what's happening, you know. But I found that they were so worried and motivated to get A's all the time that they were hard on themselves. And so to me, sometimes the questions were, okay, but when you're trying so hard to get those grades, what are you not doing? You know, what are you giving up to do that? And if it's that important, then like, this is your life.
Right.
But sometimes I think kids get so caught up in the A when I'm sitting here going, there's a lot of literature out there, like B students are leaders of the world, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because of risk. Take some risks.
Yep.
Have some fun, you know, balance.
I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with my 17-year-old who's, you know, college bound in the fall. It's not just about what you do in class, you know. There are relatively few pathways once you graduate with a 4-year degree where your GPA is a really limiting factor. Certainly there are some, you know, I mean, certain professional school, medical school, that kind of thing, grad schools are going to look at things like that. But there are an awful lot of other pathways where it's really going to be more about what else do you bring to the table. You know, if you go for a job interview, is somebody going to say, well, I see you got a B in organic chemistry 1, you know, if you're trying to get a position where really they're trying to assess whether you have some of the soft skills to be successful in that position, they're going to ask you about the B in Chem, you know, 301. They're going to ask you to talk about maybe some of the leadership experiences that you had. And that relies on the fact that you've done something outside of class. And if that meant that you got to be in that class, maybe that's okay, because, it gives you some other things to rely on for more, real world experience. And so when we're thinking about what is a well-rounded college experience, what do we want students at Culver Stockton to do? Yeah, we want them to be as absolutely successful in their classes as they possibly can be. And we want to provide them with everything that they need to do that. But we also want to provide them with rich co-curricular experiences and extra experiences that are experiential as part of the curriculum. So things like the travel study, internships, that kind of thing that really put the meat on the bone. Because I think about the transcript that shows your A's, your B's, whatever. That's the bare bones. That does not say everything about your college experience. And I think sometimes students going in to college, get a little bit too focused on, got to take this class, got to get A's in everything. If it is at the expense of being really involved, in a way that develops those social skills, the soft skills, transferable skills, all of that, then it's not really helpful in the end for a lot of potential career paths.
Right.
Yeah. So you think about, what you did in color guard, in dance, in, sorority life. That added a lot to, how you developed as a person, how you relate to other people, how you manage your own time, as this sort of whole secondary part of the college experience, that if you take all that away, what are you left with? You're left with the transcript. And that's good, but it doesn't show the whole picture of what you're capable of because of the other experiences that you had.
I tell my students all the time, I have hired a lot of people in my time and never once have hired them because of, or not because of their GPA ever, right? Like, as long as they had the qualifications to get into an interview, like that, all of those accomplishments are on the wayside. Now I want you to talk to me and really be able to demonstrate that you can engage in conversations. You can I'm in the human relationship business. So like, can you talk to somebody? Can you resolve conflicts? Can you make decent decisions where I don't have to worry at the end of the day somebody's going to get hurt?
Right.
Then, or if somebody does get hurt, that you're going to be able to respond accordingly. But that's usually about what's on your resume may get you into the interview, but once you get into the interview, you have to have those interpersonal relationship skills.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's pretty huge. I guess I'm curious, Victorya. I according to high school students, you're old, right? But you're the youngest one here in this room. So I know you hate it when I say that.
I'm still college age.
You're still college age. Yes, you are, girl. What would you say or suggest to 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old high schoolers who are looking at colleges? What should they be thinking about when they're looking at colleges?
What do you want to do with your life? But, like, not seriously. Like, to the point where, like, yeah, I want to go do these activities and I want to be a part of this. And I might want to do this for the rest of my life. But, like, not like, oh, I will be doing biology for the rest of my life. And so I am only going to the best biology schools.
So having a general direction that you want to be going.
Yes.
But not be so rigid that you can't see that there might be some other mini paths to get to the same path.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's really good advice, to not be so rigid, because I think when I've seen students who come in with a very rigid opinion of what it is they want to do, if that falls through, or if they encounter experiences that make them doubt whether that's a real possibility, sometimes that can be a good experience because, they work through it and all that. And sometimes it can be like an existential crisis, particularly if it's not something that they themselves really want to do, but it's something that maybe family members or friends or other people who are influential have been pushing them towards, but they don't feel it themselves, I think that's where you see some internal conflict. You've probably seen that in advisees through the years as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just making certain that they, and I think that that's honestly just a bit of a good characteristic to have, which is to be somewhat flexible. Right?
Yeah.
That's actually a characteristic we like to see in quite a few professions. There's some professions where it's maybe not as important, right? Like I'm thinking engineering or accounting or things like that. But there's some where a lot of flexibility is required. So anything else that you would say as they're searching?
See, I know I'm going to get yelled at by adults. My, thoughts are, okay.
Girl, you're an adult now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm probably the parents, right? But the parents usually like to yell at me when I say things blankly without explanation, and my blank without explanation responses don't listen to your parents.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't,
No.
because I think that's kind of along the lines of what I was saying too. Is college is a place to figure out who you are.
Right.
And, what you are good at, what you want to do with your life. And sometimes it's good to not have those other voices around if they're not always as encouraging as you might like in the direction that you feel most drawn to.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I don't want to say, I have 2 kids, so I don't want to say don't listen to your parents either. Listen to your parents.
Well, the parents like to tell me that it's their money and therefore their decision.
Yeah. Well,
to some extent, maybe.
And I would say I'm going to echo what both of you said, and I say this over and over and over again, which is, gosh, these college ages, they're going to be one of the most amazing times that you can learn about yourself, explore, and really grow during that time. And as a parent, it's so neat to see them do that. I will say this, and I do think students need to pursue their own interests within reason, right? So parents, mamas out there, please know that if I have a student who is going to come to me and say, I want to major in basket weaving, I'm probably going to be like, okay, if that's a major, great. That sounds like, maybe you can be the next multi-million basket weaver designer. And let's maybe also look at maybe some other double majors or other things. Like, let's do some business, because if you're going to make the baskets, you got to know how to sell them. So we will try to make certain that we will do that. But I think, and this is what I'm going to say, that I think as parents, as we're searching for colleges, obviously safety, trusting that when they're dropping their kids off, that they're going to be okay and grow and develop. But I also think as parents, it takes a lot of inner strength to let your kid go and become the person they're capable of becoming and being okay with that. And not only being okay with that, but taking joy in that. And that means parents have to have a lot of security within themselves going, I have taught my child the best I can. We've given them a good, solid foundation. Now they're going to be open to other people and other ideas, and they're going to learn and grow and build on that foundation. It doesn't mean they're going to be this completely different person. And I do think that means for many parents, we have to have a certain amount of feeling secure in our own, what we have done up to that point, and navigating those conversations so that we can continue to help guide our kiddo while also allowing them, not only allowing, I don't even want to say allowing, but encouraging them to try different things and become that person. It's a whole different game changer. And I really, that is what I wish for every student going in to college, is that they have that solid foundation that they can come back to with their parents, but that their parents are offering that encouragement to, pursue your dreams. Life, there's so many things that that they can make happen.
Yeah. And I think, as someone who's got a high school senior, that's really good advice. That resonates with me. Just to, no, you've done what you can. Is your child going to make decisions that you don't agree with? Probably. Doesn't mean that everything is ruined or that, they are going down the path that's wrong just because it's not what you would have done. So coming to peace, I guess, at some extent, with that, and kind of just getting to a place where, you recognize that your child is their own person.
Yeah.
And they're going to develop and go on and do things in their own way and learn through, experience, mistakes, whatever, in their own way. And and you've done what you can. At some point, you've done what you can. You continue to be, there for advice and to listen and to, give your wisdom. Sometimes I'm still giving a lot of unsolicited advice.
Of course.
All the time. Trying to figure out how to back off of the unsolicited advice. But it's tough. It's really tough.
It is really hard. And I don't know that any of us are going to do it 100% of the time. And there was something else that you said that made me think, especially having a kid go off, right? Because even if we can let our kid do their thing, we have the opposite end too. Whereas if my kid tells me something, oh, I need to go follow up and join that fight because my kid needs to have this experience in the way.
We see,
mind your business.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that because, we see in higher ed, this isn't just, at our college, it's all over. It's generational that, there is a greater level of acceptance or expectation, I think, for parents to get involved at a level that when I was in college would have been absolutely not a thing. Not a thing. I would have died of embarrassment. So you're saying like, no, mind your business. But I think that there are sometimes, there are students who are like, well, I will call my mom and, she'll call you. And, if somebody's 22 and that's their approach, that's different than someone who's a senior in high school.
Right.
Yeah. So how do we get them from, point A to point B?
And this has come up a couple of times. And I will stick to what I believe, which is these several things. One, they're learning. They need to learn how to navigate these conversations. They need to learn to compromise, that things aren't always going to be maybe the way that they wanted, but they certainly should learn to advocate for themselves. And I think parents need to trust and remember, in my role as faculty or a coach or whatever, I know I'm working with an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old. My goal is to help them navigate this conversation, even if it's not the kind of conversation that they want to be in, that might feel tough. But those are all experiences they need to have. Because the minute a parent steps in and says, oh no, I'm going to have this conversation with the coach or the faculty or whoever, they're sending the message that you're not capable. My 18-year-old is not capable of having that conversation. My 20-year-old. Right. And they have to learn this somehow, because what's happening is they're then going into the workforce and they're not learning how to have these conversations. And we're hearing parents are showing up at jobs and this and that.
Right.
And at some point, dear parents, and just please teach your kids how to do this and let them do this. It doesn't have to be perfect or even okay. They may not get everything they want, and that's okay. They're going to figure things out. And we've got to let them have those opportunities. And what better place than at colleges where this is what we do. We work with that age group. We will help them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the gift of having a few years to have a sort of soft place to fall or to fail, and to learn how to navigate those situations without your parents is really, that's an investment.
Yes.
that's completely separate of the degree, that's printed on a piece of paper at the end. The ability to learn how to navigate all kinds of situations on your own.
Yes.
Is really a powerful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it really is, and it is challenging as a parent to sit back and to just trust your kiddo who's going to go off and do it, and probably not do it as well as you might be able to do because you have 20 plus more years experience. But our role has shifted. We're not showing up. Even in high school, I hope there was a little bit of backing off and letting them do that. But then also, so you're moving more maybe to like that sideline coach or the phone a friend sort of supports and things like that. And sometimes as parents, we're not as ready for that shift, or we're not realizing, I need to make a shift because my role is sort of changing. And that's a real skill set.
Yeah. I think, when we think about what do you want your child to be prepared to do? I was just looking at this, looking at some lists and things that were online, like what should an 18-year-old know how to do? And there are a lot of things there that are sort of focused on doing their own laundry, washing dishes, really like household type skills, but also those things like calling and making a doctor's appointment, and, did I hit a nerve? And calling and making a doctor's appointment, or solving a problem, calling customer service to try to solve a problem.
Yeah.
That's where I think we see students sometimes, they need a little extra encouragement in learning how to do that. Yeah.
So I know we've got a few things. I'm sort of recapping, right? The search for colleges, man, this is such a big time for students who are looking at this. There's lots of right decisions out there too. So I think that's another big thing, is lots of right decisions. Then parents, how can they help support that? I do want to say, and I don't think we've said this, but I think in this day and age, sometimes wondering whether the return on investment in a 4-year degree, the stats are still there, right?
Absolutely.
$1 million more.
Yeah, over the lifetime earnings on average are still more than $1 million for people who complete a bachelor's degree compared to those with a high school diploma. So, it's still there. The return on investment is still there. And I think in a lot of ways, you could say that it's even going to be more so in an environment that's increasingly influenced by AI, because we don't know what jobs might become more and more obsolete. And so, if you have someone who's been broadly trained with critical thinking, that's going to be valuable down the road.
Well, and I also think too, knowing that higher ed institutions, they're out there looking at the projections of markets. And so helping them with that. But those are some of the things that sort of come to mind to me as thinking about what students are going in, the kinds of advice we give those 17, 18-year-olds. Also, maybe not feeling so much pressure, right? Because of where you going, what are you doing?
Right.
That can feel like a lot of pressure with that right now.
I agree. And and that's something I've been trying to emphasize to my son is, don't focus so much on the major. He was really kind of thinking about majoring in one thing, and now he's thinking about, I'm not sure if I want to major in that anymore. And I don't, and I think that's a thing that they can get very worried about. And I'm telling him, don't worry about it. It's okay. I'm not worried about it, and I should know because I work in, higher ed. And if I'm not worried about it, you shouldn't be worried about it. And, but people ask, the first thing they ask is, where are you going to college? If they know you're going to college, they might say, where are you going to go? And then what's the next question? What are you going to major in? Right. And so students are looking for that major, and they're looking for that, in the schools that they're focused on. But if they change their major, you better make sure that the whole school itself is still a good fit. Right. So
I don't know if this is an option, but as you were talking, it made me think of my one son, who went in, and he was technically, it was undecided, but he didn't like that term. He said he was open-minded.
Open-minded, yeah.
Right, that it wasn't that he was undecided. He was actually taking a lot of different courses to sort of see what fit. And I sort of like that better.
Maybe we should just change it in the catalog. We can do that. The faculty can do that.
So maybe we should talk to the president. Oh, wait, hey.
Wait, we have faculty governance. I think the faculty need to do that.
Like, this isn't about being undecided. I might be open-minded, and I'm exploring my opportunities.
Absolutely.
I think it's so much more strengths-based.
It is. It is. So speaking of strengths-based, and I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I was thinking, we were talking earlier about like knowing yourself and how important it is to know what your skill set is and how college helps you develop that. So when you were, embarking on your college search, did you like take any personality tests? Did you, do anything that made you kind of like focus on what your strengths were versus, what was more challenging for you? Or did you just kind of innately know that, you felt like?
I didn't take any personality tests or anything like that.
No Myers-Briggs, no.
Those came later.
So, okay. Probably in psychology they did.
At all?
What's ONAD?
It gave you like the different REASIC, realistic, investigative, social, conventional.
I don't know. I did some sort of like career one.
Did I have you do it? Maybe? Or
I was
did you
in
do
college and career readiness class.
That's right. The one class you went every other day.
The one class I went in person my senior year.
And so they had you, doing some of that kind of thing. Do you feel like the information that you got out of that was accurate? Did it help you decide what you wanted to do? Did it turn out to be helpful?
In a field like psychology or an art field. So
So here you are.
Yeah.
And you didn't want to do like pre-art therapy. Like you always knew it was very distinct. You did not want to combine.
Therapy does not seem like fun.
No.
So,
yeah, but I don't know. People always wondered, like with me, because I did both secondary education and I went the mental health route instead of the school counseling. And even our ISB person back in the day, I was like, Angel, you're the only one I know who did that. And I remember I was actually presenting at the advisory board for the National Child Traumatic Stress Network and having a trauma project that we were implementing trauma-based services in schools, which was unheard of at the time. And this was like 2010. They're like, Angel, why are you working with schools? I looked at them like, because that's where the kids are. And the directors came up. They're like, that reminded them of the bank run. Like, why are you? But now mental health services in schools are so much more prevalent and just sort of, but back then, 15 years ago. But to me, if you want what is best for children, I've always believed you have to simultaneously educate and attend to their social emotional. Like one without the other, they're not going to develop into the amazing young person they can become. It's always a blend of both. I don't know how I got onto that, but
But I think we can wrap it up.
We can wrap it up. So what are your takeaways?
Why are we starting with me?
Oh, well, where would you like to start?
Well, I don't have any, so I was going to listen to you guys first. So who wants to start? Takeaways?
There is no one right path, I think, for students as they're sorting out what's the right school, what's the right major. There's no one right path. And, you mentioned something earlier about the college search, feeling like a lot of pressure and, a lot of people are worried that they won't choose the right college. But there are multiple right options for most students. There are many choices that would be very, very good. And so, it's really about what you do when you get there more than anything. And so, the college search is only part of the process. The rest of it is, okay, once you're planted there, how do you bloom? How do you get involved beyond getting all, the A's, the B's, whatever in your classes, maybe even the occasional C, hey, even a D, you'll get a degree every so often, right? How do you navigate the curriculum, but also what are you learning as a student and as a parent, what are you encouraging your student to do outside of the curricular experience, whether it's athletics or fine arts or student organizations, like, things like Greek life also are really adding a lot to the experience. So at Culver Stockton, we're always thinking about that as this really equally important part of the student experience, because that's where they're developing the mindset, the skills, the abilities, in complement to what they're learning in classes that are really going to help them be successful adults and often even leaders. That's where some of those skills are developed. You don't necessarily learn to be a leader by getting the best grade in the class. You may learn it outside of class. Yeah, those are my takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I just love this topic in the sense of this is one of the most amazing times that young people can grow from this, really solid foundation to really being on that path of becoming who they want to be. And so I love seeing young people at this age. And so just really encourage them to just be open to all the opportunities, be okay with trying new things, and it maybe not going quite the way that you had hoped, but you can try something else and it's okay. And then also as parents, just really thinking in terms of sit back and watch your kid do their thing, because it will be really, really sort of cool, and be okay, with some of the mishaps. I mean, hopefully they're not too big and can't, most things can be overcome, but let them learn, while the stakes are sort of low with some of this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. College is just 4 years of your life. You don't gotta know what you're doing with the rest of your life. That's all I got.
That's what you got?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank
Shelley,
you
for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.